Hey everybody, this is The Middle with Chris Adams. Thank you for listening. I just want to say that, and I know it's been a while, I haven't done much of anything. I just want to give you a quick update. It's right now, as of recording this is Good Friday. To all of you celebrating Passover, happy Easter on Sunday for everybody. I've been noticing a real weird trend happening lately on social media. People are getting shut down for merely having differences of opinion, which I never understand, and the arguments for it are very weak at best. The most that people can tell me is something as hate speech, which it's usually from comedians, which I don't think there is such thing as hate speech from comedians. Not to say that comedians can't be jerks, or not to say that they can't be mean, but comedians are people that push the boundaries. Their whole purpose in life is to try to get you to think, and that might require some offense. And I'm firmly 100% on the side of comedians, and I'll always be on the side of comedians because I've been doing comedy for a while. And to no success, I am nobody. It's fine. I do work in the business to some extent. I work behind the scenes. I have never achieved much for myself. But the fact that I even make a living in comedy is really the goal that I've always wanted. And it's the thing that I dreamed for when I was a young child. Now, let me explain a little bit about where I come from. I was born in 1983. I was a small, well, actually, it was very small. I was 1 pound, 7 ounces when I was born. I was a heroin baby. My mother enjoyed heroin. Basically, the last time I did heroin was intravenously through the umbilical cord. You know, I'd never done it myself. I refused. When I was born, I came out very small, and there was a good chance that I was going to die. That was my first brush with death, is when I was a baby, because I was put on life support. I was in that little incubator. I wasn't given much of a chance to live, but I think being born in 83 actually made it slightly better for me. I managed to beat the odds. My mother called me her little miracle baby, and I remember her telling me every day that she thanked God that I made it through, because there was a lot of times where it didn't look like it was going to work out for me early on. From the get-go, I had a lot going against me. And the thing that I want to say about this story I'm about to tell you is that a lot of people kind of take their life and say, woe is me. And I never wanted to do that, because I don't believe in that. I believe that life, even though it can be tough, it can be sad, it can be difficult, it's really what you make of it mentally. The only thing people can do is affect you physically from the outside, but if you're strong mentally on the inside, they can't win. And I've always been strong. I would often read early on in my childhood. That was one of the things that I loved doing. I would read Bible stories, I would read children's books, I would read anything I could get my hands on, and I loved the fact that I could read at an early age. It excited me. I would read passages from the Bible before, my mom died at 9, so I was reading as early, I think, as 3. Reading, for some reason, just grabbed me from the earliest moments. And there's many times when I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, because your mother being on heroin and my whole life was her. I didn't make a lot of friends. Even now I don't have a lot of friends. I have 2 really good friends, and then a few other periphery friends that I think are good, but not best friends. I never was around a lot of people, and we were often moving a lot of the time. We moved more than we stayed in any one place. Most of the time we'd be kicked. Either we'd have to leave an apartment in the middle of the night because we got kicked out, or we'd leave before the landlord kicked us out. And most of the time we'd stay with whoever would take us in. Usually it was other poor people. I stayed with every racial group imaginable. I lived with every group. I lived with everyone. And early on, my mother told me that you should always judge people by their actions, not any other characteristic. And it stuck with me. And especially living hand to mouth the way we did, never knowing where our food would come from, requiring, that type of life requires you to have to rely on other people. So that's the life I grew up around. I grew up like, hey, you don't know where you're going to be ever, but at least if you're a good enough person, people will help you out. That's how we survived. And my mother never stopped doing heroin, which is probably why we never stayed anywhere long enough. We never really stayed anywhere long enough to be able to have a place to live, And when your mom, I don't know if any of you have ever had parents that do drugs, but usually they pick the drugs over paying rent. It was a little bit of a crazy upbringing. I never quite knew where my next meal would come from. I never got the chance to know that I was going to eat the next day. But I was so happy, regardless of all of that, because in the end I had the only thing that really mattered to me, and it was never stuff. Stuff never was important to me. I don't care about status. I don't care about being cool. I had my mother and a stepfather, both of who loved me. Very flawed individuals. My stepfather was also addicted to heroin, so they would often use together. I mean, I would watch them shoot up every day. I still know to this day the smell of heroin when it's cooked on a spoon. I know that bubbly. I know how they'd use a lighter and it would make the black tar all bubbly. And I remember that. It was a really sweet, sickly smell that I really hate even to this day. And I just remember that was just my upbringing. I had to learn to read. I had to play by myself. And the only good thing about that, though, is I even at an early age, I learned more of who I was and what type of person I was. It made me independent. Maybe too early, but it made me independent. It made me have to question and figure out like what is important in life. And it was really just family. Family is the most important thing. Everything else, it doesn't matter. Money comes and goes. Success, people should strive for it, which is good to want to be successful at something, but it doesn't fill that need. It doesn't fill that void in people's lives. And when they get there, they realize that later on, almost too late, in fact. Success for success' sake isn't really worth it. I remember going to school maybe a little bit later than I should have. Actually, I know I did because I graduated high school at 18, so I was like a year behind. But my reading comprehension skills were far above any of my classmates. And I remember I was always really good at reading, and I would volunteer to read. I would talk in front of the class if I could. I was this little quiet kid, but for some reason, talking in front of people never scared me. And I don't know what that was. I don't know where I got that confidence, but I've always had that, even when I was little. I remember things got a little dicey with my mother. She would often go to jail. A lot of times we'd go steal stuff together. Well, I didn't steal it, but I would be with her while she stole shoes from me. I remember after too many times of couch surfing and getting kicked out of apartments, eventually we became homeless. Ironically, those are some of the best memories I have. Yeah, we slept in a car, but we were together, and close. And I finally felt a little bit closer to my mom at that point, and she taught me a lot of valuable things, like never judge people even if they're in bad situations. Just realize that there is good in people even if they're struggling. Everyone has the potential for both good and evil, and it's not about what you look like on the outside, it's all about your actions. I remember these things very vividly, and it's weird how certain things can become the greatest thing in the world when you have nothing. When you're starving and you beg for money on the streets, which I did a lot with my mother, and you get enough money to just get a plate full of tacos, and your mom is hungry, but instead she gives you the last taco because she wants to make sure that you eat. She's willing to go without for a day. I can't describe that joy, that level of joy on something so small. And it's never been recreated. I've never felt that good ever again. Like, no matter what I get, no matter how much I achieve, that feeling is the feeling I'm chasing. I'm not chasing success for success' sake. I'm chasing feeling that joy with somebody else, or feeling a joy like that with somebody else. Friends, family, hopefully something more personal later. And I wish I could. I always want to yell at people that worry about money. It's like, it's not important. It really isn't. Money is one thing that can help alleviate problems, but even without it, you can be the happiest person ever. You don't need as much as you think. And I say that, and people look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, no, you're crazy. Maybe because of what I went through, I'm a little stronger than the average person. I don't know. I don't think I am. I think I'm just another person. I don't think I'm special either. And that's why when people try and tell me opinions about life, I just go, you have no idea how good you have it, especially in America. That's why I don't buy into a lot of people saying, oh, America's the worst country in the world. I'm like, no, it isn't. I came from nothing, right? Let me complete my story. After we were homeless for a little while, this is, all during the times when my mother would get caught with drugs or stealing or something and go to jail for a little bit. I remember once she got caught for stealing and she was in jail for a few months, and so I was with my stepdad. That was the worst thing in the world to me. The cops just tore my mother away. I didn't understand at the time that she did something wrong, but I do know that it tore at me. I felt like something was taken away, something very important in my life. Even though my mother did a lot of bad things. I remember after she got back from jail, and we went to live with my stepdad's mother, and she was a horrible human being, I guess, or at least seemed like a very mean-spirited person. She wasn't all bad. I mean, she believed in God, I guess, so she wasn't terrible, but she just seemed like a very angry person. But I get it now why, looking back as an adult. She was mad at her son for being a heroin addict, She was trying to give him tough love, and to me it came off mean because she was mean to my mother, and I really didn't like that. That bothered me to no end. But I remember they got into this one fight, and it was horrific. And my stepdad's mother told me to just go wait outside and play with toys. And he he uh, he he beat her so bad that I remember when he was arrested. I don't even know what the argument was about, but that's I still have that memory of riding in the ambulance with her to the hospital, and it still bothers me to this day if a guy is rough with a woman. It makes me angry on a deep level, where I just want to murder that person. And I know I never would murder anyone, but I at least want to beat him up. And I'm not a tough guy. I'm a short person. I'm only like 5'3" or something. I'm really short, but it just makes me angry. She went to the hospital that night, and I spent the night with her in the hospital room. She went back with him. I don't know why. She did. She was as much addicted to heroin as she was him, I guess. In that way, they're a perfect match. And she got kicked out. We all got kicked out of living with my stepdad's mom at the time. And things were bad again. I mean, we were in and out of places, but my mother, in order to make ends meet, she ran out of jobs to work. She ran out of minimum wage jobs that she could do. She wasn't a very good employee for the most part. I mean, she was good, but she wasn't. She was on heroin, so not employee of the month. She ended up, and I think this is probably my stepdad's doing, but she ended up prostituting herself so that we didn't starve and so we'd have a place to live. And for a while it was good, I guess. I remember waiting outside when she was doing it. I even went with her once when I don't know where Steve was. I went with her with one of her clients, and I was told to wait in the next room while she did what she had to do. I watched the Blue Lagoon, though. I thought that was pretty good. So it wasn't all bad. And I remember one night she went out and to get a client, or I don't know where she went, but she didn't come home. She got arrested. That was when I was taken away from them, that situation. When she got arrested for prostitution. And I went to go live with my grandparents for a little bit. And they couldn't take care of me, I knew they couldn't. They were too old, even at that point, they were too old. But I went to live with them anyway for a minute, and then I was put into a home or a foster situation. I don't know what it was exactly because I never really understood it. I was a child, so I don't know what the proper term was. But I was put into a group home, and then someone eventually, after a few months, picked me up and let me live with them in Orange. They took me in. They're a good family. They're a nice Christian family, and maybe at that time I was a little angry, so I didn't quite. I was probably screwed up as a kid because I never had structure per se. I remember. I mean, my mom had morals. She just wasn't always a great parent because she was on drugs. I remember one time I accidentally stole a magazine from the grocery store, and she hit me, not hard, but she hit me just to let me know that what I did was wrong. She said, "We don't steal." And I'm thinking, wait, didn't we used to steal shoes? I think like this is a very confusing message for a child. I think I spent a year there at this foster home with these people who were very nice people, very good to me. I got to eat every day. They made me tacos for some reason because I'm brown, and well, that's another thing. I never met my father, so I never knew what race I was. I never got a chance to figure it out. And I took a DNA test recently and found out that I'm half Native American. I don't know what tribe. I don't know anything about my family. I don't know where they are, who they are. But I know that they're out there somewhere. I hope to be able to meet them and fill in a gap, fill in a part of my life I've never known. And I'm 34 now, and I just found out that I'm Native American like 2 weeks ago. And it's a weird thing to find out in your 30s. I have no connection to the culture. I don't know what that means. I don't know who they are. I don't know what tribe. I don't know anything about them. But I know that there's a whole part of me that now just got opened up. Anyways, so I was living with this family, and they were treating me like one of their own. And I had another foster sister at that time, and she was really nice. And I remember like everything was good, but it wasn't great. Well, we never wanted for food, and we had a room, which was huge to me at the time. It wasn't with my mother. It wasn't good enough. I wanted to be with her, even if we were homeless. I'd rather be with my mother than be in a nice house and eat every day. And eventually, my mom won me back. She did what she had to do. She did her time. She did her probation, and eventually, she picked me up, which was the happiest day of my life. And finally went back to an apartment, like a real apartment, and I had my own room. And I remember being there for several months just happy. We had a dog, we had a cat. Things were great. Things were for the one time in my life with my mother, things were, well, stable, and it felt like a home. And then December 25th, 1992 was the best Christmas I ever had. My mom got me all the gifts. You know, she spoiled me. She even got me a Nintendo. She spoiled me, and she made sure that I was happy. And then 3 days, 3 days later, she didn't wake up. She she had a grand mal seizure. I'd later find out. You know, after years and years of drug use, your body doesn't. Well, heroin addicts don't live long usually if they keep using. Even though she stopped, she was 36. 36, she started when she was around 14, I think. You know, it's not a good recipe for a long life. And that was the darkest day of my life. I remember being woken up by my stepdad, tears in his eyes. But I say this story really just to let everyone know that no matter how bad life seems, there is happiness in even the worst of situations. You just have to be able to find it. And I think that that childhood is probably responsible for why I do comedy. It's why I think I'm funny. It's what makes me me. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And that's why I'm willing to fight for anyone that's a comedian, willing to tell the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it makes people offended, because the truth is the only thing that we have. I'm seeing a lot of comedians get banned from places like Owen Benjamin, which I think is unfair, because he's just a guy trying to tell his truth. He should be allowed. I'm not trying to bum it. I know this was an unfunny story. It's just my story. It's what happened to me in life. And I thank you for listening. I hope maybe that provides hope to those that went through something similar. Or even if you didn't. Even if your problems are that you're depressed. I hope it provides you some comfort to know that I'm still pretty happy. I laugh a lot. I think that's the key. We need to laugh more. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe, and comment, rate it on iTunes. Thank you, and have a good day. Happy Easter.